Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. My name is Doctorate and I'm entertaining a request today because we have a little extra time in between appointments about large breed puppy. So I specifically got asked to do a comparison review of the Hill Science Diet large breed puppy, the Purina Pro Plan, and the Orijen. And so these companies actually have a very big difference in philosophy amongst their foods. And so this might be an interesting one. And so I just wanted to notate that before we get started that there's probably going to be some differences here at the end. I'm going to be using the Hill Science Diet website. I'm going to be using the Purina Pro Plan product guide. And then I'm also going to be using the Orijen website. Now, the Orijen website does not list dry matter basis formulations, which is not the greatest. They really should do that. But it's not required. And so what we're going to have to do is we are going to end up having to do a conversion. And it's still not going to be super accurate for the Orijen because that conversion is going to be on minimum maximums and not a typical analysis. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But yeah, welcome everyone. I hope you enjoy this review. If you do and you like this kind of style of review, and we're using the word review kind of loosely. It's not a review. It is applying a systematic approach to looking at pet food so that every food is evaluated kind of devoid of personal feelings and fuzzy feelings and emotionally driven decisions. And so we're just going to be looking at the numbers today. I'll show you along the way some of the pitfalls people fall into. But really, at the end of the day, we're just going to be looking at the numbers to help you guys kind of understand how to interpret a label and maybe make a decision based on that versus, again, emotionally charged topics. And so we're going to do that today. The place we're going to start is hillspet.com, and you can go there and you can search for the puppy large breed lamb meal and brown rice recipe. So there is a difference between a large breed puppy and other puppies. So large breed puppies, I guess we'll set a couple ground rules here, and we are going to be using this chart here. And this chart comes from Small Animal Clinical Nutrition. I compiled this chart from the chapter on puppies and the chapter on orthopedic disorders. So you will find that there are some different numbers between those two chapters. I chose to use the stricter numbers because I'm always asked what's the absolute best, absolute best, absolute best. So please know that the fat numbers that we are using are quite restrictive because I'm using the orthopedic developmental the numbers that we need to avoid a lot of orthopedic developmental, and I'll point that out when we get there. But the difference between a small breed puppy and a large breed puppy is we don't want very fast or excessive growth, because when that happens and we provide the body with too much nutrition or too rich of nutrition, the dog, specifically the dog as a species, which may be different than a lot of other species, because there's not like large breed cats or large breed horse or anything like that. And the dog uniquely as a species, we know that if we provide too rich of nutrition, the body will lay down bone too fast, and it will lay down bone inappropriately too fast, which can lead to some developmental disorders later in life. Okay, so that's nutrition science. We have that information, and so it would behoove us to take that information and formulate a pet food that is accounting for those things. And so that's why large breed puppies actually need a more restricted profile than one would think. The other question I get frequently is, when do I transition my large breed puppy to adult food? And there is the right, most perfect answer, and then there is reality. The right answer, the most correct answer, is that you want to transition them once the growth has stopped. And so every dog is going to be different. There is no special number. Okay. And so, it would be great for me to say you need to bring your puppy in every month, and I'll measure them height and width and diameter. And when we have determined, or you're doing this at home, you have determined that the growth has stopped, we will then switch from the large breed puppy to an adult. And that might be, anywhere between 9 months to 18 months. I've heard out there 24 months. I don't think that that's true. I have never seen a dog still growing at 24 months old, but whatever it is. The other thing that I have heard is, well, based on the growth plates, large breed dogs, growth plates, insert your breed here, Great Dane, Mastiff, Cane Corso, insert your breed here. I read, or my breeder told me that these dogs are going to grow until 18 months old. The growth plates, whatever, don't close till 18 to 24 months. That is true. That is true. But what they are failing to convey to you, or maybe they don't know, or maybe they read this on the internet, is that although the growth plates in general, all the growth plates, to take them in totality, may close at 18 months for a large breed dog, it is not the growth plates that we are worried about. Okay, so there are growth plates all over the body. You have a growth plate in your pelvis, you have a growth plates in your spine, you have growth plates in your long bones, you have growth plates in your pinky. Okay, the only bones that we're worried about are the long bones, and in general the long bones will have stopped their excessive growth at around 9 months. And so if we don't transition them at exactly when they stop growing, or really close to when they stop growing, or at around 9 to 12 months when the majority of the growth plates and the growth plates of the long bones, which we're worried about, close, if we don't do that, then we might be running into some issues with obesity. And to be quite honest, if at that last appointment, that 1 year appointment, when we tell you, look, it's time to switch, we're 12 months old, it's time to switch, the reason why we're doing that is there are a lot of people who forget to switch, and they just keep feeding large breed puppy, and they do it for years and years and years, and these dogs become obese. And so the sweet spot probably really to start transitioning is probably about a year for these guys. Or if you want to be absolutely precise, you need to do that when the growth has stopped or slowed, because you are literally measuring your dog. We're not talking about eyeballing it. We're not talking about, we'll think about it next month. I mean, that's the correct way to do it. So because most people don't do that, and the realistic way to do it is your vet will probably transition you at about 12 months, so that we don't run into some other issues not related to growth issues if we don't do that transition at that time. So that is kind of the answer, and to hopefully dispel some of the myths. I don't really think they're myths. I think it's well-intended people that have read some information on the internet and have read some papers, and say, oh, look, the growth plates close at 24 months for the Great Dane. But what they're failing to realize is there are a lot of growth plates in the body, and they're not the ones that we're worried about. And also that the growth exponentially decreases after 9 months. So the majority of growth is happening 0 to 9 months. And then after that, the growth is just really minuscule. And that makes sense when you think about it, right? So you get this little puppy, and it's super fast growth. Those first couple months, they're getting big every appointment, like, oh my God, they've gotten so big, they've doubled, they tripled. That really doesn't happen. The dogs are not, Great Danes are not doubling and tripling after 12 months of age. And so that's what we're worried about. We're about that exponentially fast growth. We're not just worried about growth in general. It is the exponential growth. Okay. So now that we've talked about that, and you guys understand the science behind it and why we say what we say, let's jump into the nutrient analysis for the large breed puppy. We do have the chart. So let me turn on my screen capture here. All right. Now, a large breed puppy, now that we've got the screen capture going, is going to be any dog that at maturity is greater than 50 to 70 pounds. Some companies will say 50 pounds, some will say 70. You need to read the AFCO statement. We're going to do that today so that you know if it's a large breed puppy or not. So here are the numbers here, and we're going to work through it. We're going to be using the pet food scoring system. For those of you that are not familiar with it, you can check out that video where it is explained. But that's where we're going to be assigning all these numbers. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is look for that AFCO statement. Let's make sure that that is correct. So large breed puppies over 55 pounds when adult, that's what they're recommending this for. So they're using a 55-pound definition for their large breed. They do have this little recommendation here where they say recommended for large breed puppies, 55 pounds when adult, up to 18 months old, and not recommended for adult, mature adult, pregnant, or nursing dogs because of a lower energy density and lower calcium content compared to the regular puppy. So they're telling you right there what they've done, and they've done that because they know through research that this is kind of the dynamic that we're looking for. And you can see they're calling out at 18 months. They don't recommend feeding it past 18 months. So that's, kind of circles back to what we were talking about before. I'm trying to find the actual AFCO statement. I wonder. There it is. I don't know why it took me so long. Animal feeding test using AFCO procedures substantiate that Hillside puppy large breed provides complete balanced nutrition for growing puppies. So they're going to get a point for each of those things. So not only did they do feeding trials on this, so they fed this food to dogs for a certain amount of time, which a lot of people, oh, those trials are really short, they're only so many weeks. Well, that's that's the important thing, especially in a puppy. It's the developmental exponential growth that's happening in just a few weeks' time. And so they did do feeding trials on that, so they're going to get a point there. I'm happy to see that. And it is for the correct life stage as they are advertising. It is for large breed puppy, and then they have those call outs saying, please don't feed it to pregnant or lactating, don't feed it to adults, it's not appropriate. The calcium and energy density is restricted. So they get 2 points for that. The next thing we're going to look at is an ingredient list, and what we're just looking for, at least in this stage of the game. Certainly you can dive into it more, but it's not really going to factor in. We're just making sure that the nutrients are appropriate right now. It's not really going to factor in because it's not, part of this bare bones approach, but we're going to look at the ingredients just to make sure it's not grain-free and it's not raw, and it's not. We've got lamb meal as the first ingredient, then we've got some rice, pearled barley, whole grain oats, chicken fat. They do have that pea protein in there, whole grain wheat, and then you can go, farther and farther down the line. It did have some hydrolyzed chicken flavor in there. So even though this diet, appears to be predominantly lamb meal, and they are using hydrolyzed chicken, they do have chicken fat in there. And so this really wouldn't be a food trial appropriate. I don't, usually we're not seeing really, really young puppies needing to have a food trial, but it does on rare occasions, really, really rare occasions happen. I do get that comment a lot, like my puppy's allergic to XYZ in the food. That is just very statistically rare because the immune system has to be exposed to a protein in animals in order for it to then become allergic. So it's very hard for a puppy's immune system, which is immature and not developed, to actually be able to develop an allergy. It can't even develop, itself yet. That's why I have to do boosters, and you guys can check out my video on allergies.
I was just assuming you were still here and taking appointments.
Yeah.
Okay. I just scheduled you like at 4 o'clock, so I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, now I'm here.
Okay.
Yep. So you can check out my video on allergies, and you can hopefully check out soon a video I'm doing on vaccines. So they're going to get a point for the ingredient list for not being grain-free, and another point for not being raw, so up to 4 points. And going into the feeding guide, the feeding guide is really important in large breed puppies because we do not want them overfed and, again, having this excessive growth. And so for a puppy, we need, for a 20-pound puppy, the resting energy requirement, we have another chart for that. You can calculate it, but I'll go ahead and show you the chart really quick since we are here. You can calculate it. I also have a video on that. If you guys are not familiar with the channel, check out the playlist, and it's really helpful. I get a lot of questions about, can you review XYZ? And I've already done the review, so I do have some nice playlists. Or you can also use the search button on the channel homepage to go ahead and search through the existing videos, because there's probably like well over 200 now. So, definitely check that out, and you will see what we've already reviewed. So let's say a 20-pound dog needs about 366 for the resting energy requirement. Up to 4 months, we want to do 3 times that. So let's do calculator, because I'm using my phone to record. 366 times 3. So we want somewheres about 1098 for calories. Sorry, the phone keeps ringing. It's a very busy day. It's actually a Monday, so it's very busy, but I didn't have an appointment in the next slot, so I'm multitasking. So 20 pound, they're recommending 2 3/4 cups, so 2.75 cups. Very, very spot on. So definitely getting a point there. Now let's see if they can match the nutrient profile. We've got the Orijen there next up. So we'll go to them next, and then we'll finish up with Purina. So you can see this is a dry matter basis. That's where we're going to run into problems with the Orijen, but I've done some conversions, so no worries there. Here's this really restrictive profile that we like for our large breed puppy. We are going to put it. Okay, so protein, again, we want very tailored parameter, 20 to 32. They're at 27.9, so they're going to get a point there. I swear, I gotta win today. Then the fat, again, fat is super restrictive on this chart. The really, really restrictive, perfect if you want to be absolutely the safest you can be for developmental orthopedic disorders. You have to keep the fat between 8 and 12. I realize that is extremely difficult. If you look through the chapter, you will see that they can, I think, go up to 16 or 17. Health Science say it's going 17.8. I'm not going to give them the point for that just because I am trying to seek out for you guys the best of the best of the best. But just know that it may be nearly impossible. I don't know that I have found a food that is a large breed puppy that will be able to be down to this 8 to 12%. So just know that may not be attainable, and that's another important thing. We've got ideals, and sometimes the ideals is just not feasible to meet. Either it can't be done or it's too costly to be done. And so they aren't going to get the point there. The fiber in puppies is not really that important. Usually we say less than 5%, so they are going to get a point there. And then we get into the minerals, which is really important for that growth and develop. We're specifically worried about bone, so calcium and phosphorus is really important. We want to keep that calcium somewhere between 0.7 and 1.2, and they're doing it nicely. And the phosphorus we want somewhere between 0.6 and 1.1, and they're also achieving that at 0.9. And so if I remember correctly, that means they're only losing 1 point. So this large breed puppy is going to score a 9 on the pet food scoring system. All right, so that was the science side. The next one we wanted to do was the Orijen. And like I said, there are some different philosophies here. So we've got the bag here, large breed puppy, 85% animal ingredients, whole prey diet. And we've gone over that before. That's kind of a marketing shtick. That's their whole marketing thing. Okay, so let's find the AFCO statement. Let's get into the nutrient analysis and the actual things that we're worried about. So Orijen large breed puppy is formulated, so they did not get a point there. So they did not feeding trial like the Hill Science diet one did, to meet the nutritional levels for all life stages, including the growth of large-sized dogs. So this is an important distinction. The Hill Science diet was specifically saying this is tailored specifically tailored to the needs of large breed puppies, 55 pounds or more when they are adults, specifically for that group of animals. Do not feed it to an adult dog. Do not feed it to a pregnant or lactating dog. We have honed in to exactly what is perfect for your dog, because what is perfect for a large breed puppy is not going to be perfect for another animal. It's going to be suboptimal for one of them. That's the thing with all life stages. All life stages can't be perfect for everything. It's going to be suboptimal for everybody, or suboptimal for all of them but one. And so that's what they've done here. They've lumped this in as a all life stage food, but they are saying 70 pounds more or more as an adult. So it's a little bit different than the science diet. This one's saying 70 pounds and it's an all life stage. So they're not going to get any points for the AFCO statement because it was all life stages, and it was also formulated and not feeding trial. So we've lost the points there. The next thing we're going to do is go ahead onto the ingredient list. So they've done a little tricky trick here, a famous tricky trick, and that is the ingredient splitting. And so they're playing the ingredient game here, where they've done chicken, turkey, salmon, whole herring, chicken liver as their first ingredients. It shoots them to the front of the ingredient list because they're heavy on water. And then they've got the actual source of your protein, which is the dehydrated chicken, dehydrated turkey, dehydrated sardine, dehydrated chicken liver. So they split it. They could have just put chicken, but they've split it so that the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 ingredients look like they're the first 10 ingredients are meat, when in reality they could have just condensed those and only the first 3 ingredients would have been meat. And then you get into your lentils, your beans and your peas, and we all know the controversy with lentils, peas and beans, and dilated cardiomyopathy. So it does appear that this diet is also grain-free, which raises a lot of concern amongst cardiologists, especially in a large breed dog, because those do tend to be prone to dilated cardiomyopathy just genetically in general. So they're only going to get 1 point there for not being raw. So far, Orijen has only gleaned 1 point on the nutrient analysis. The next thing we're going to look for is the feeding guide. Now, this is an all life stage food, so the feeding guide is going to be quite convoluted. And you're going to, if you're not fancy on calculating calories and doing that, you might be a little confused with the feeding guide. So current weight, say we're expected to be 88. They're recommending 4 cups. It is 451 kcals per cup. And I also want to let you guys know that while we're here, the metabolizable energy, or the energy density of this food, is 3,760, which was the same as the science diet. So these are really close as far as energy density. But 451 kcals per cup, and they want us to feed 4 cups. That's going to be way too much, but it's not telling me here if this is an adult or a puppy, anything like that. So let's maybe check the back of the bag here. Yeah, I don't like this. I don't like this setup at all. It's not very straightforward. So if I was feeding this food and we wanted to make sure that we were feeding correctly, they're not going to get the point there because it's not, you have to either use their calculator, and it's not listed on the website, and it's not easily listed on the package either. If you are feeding the 4 cups that the website is recommending, that's way totally off. So 451 times 4, remember we wanted 1098, is 1,804. So it's almost double what we should be feeding. So that's probably the adult recommendation, and they're not listing a puppy, so they're not going to get a point for that either. So we're up to 1 point. So there's feasibly no way that this food can score above a 7, which is what we want. It's just not a possibility. But let's go ahead and pull the chart up to go through the converted nutrient analysis. I had to do the conversion, and you'll see why here in a second. Their website, again, and this is sometimes a trick if a company is more into marketing and not into nutrition, is if their website does not list a dry matter basis, because all of us in the know, all of us nutrition gurus, or not gurus, but nutrition enthusiasts, know that you need to evaluate food on a dry matter basis or a kcal per 100 basis. And so if you find a company that does not do that, that might be an indication that they aren't serious about nutrition, because a lot of companies do list that information. So let's go down to the ingredient analysis, guaranteed analysis, and I'll show you. You can see here minimums and maximums. That means we don't know what the upper limits are. So in general, what you're going to have to do is call the company and get the information if you want the exacts. But in this case, because it's not even if it got all the points for the nutrient analysis, it would only score a 6. So I'm not going to bother the company with it, because it's not going to score good either way. But if you were serious about a food and you wanted to do it, you would have to call them and get that information, because it's not readily available on the website. So protein, we want between 20 and 32. You can see here where the minimum with the moisture included is 38%. When you release that moisture and you do the calculations and the conversions, and I do have a video on that as well, it brings the protein up to 43.18. So excessive in protein, way too much protein for that proper restricted bone growth. Then we get into fat at 16%. When that's corrected, it actually only brings it up to 18.18. Still not getting a point because it's above the 12. It's certainly above the 17. So not going to get a point for that either. Fiber, we'll give them actually, I can't even give them points. It's supposed to be less than 5. We can't even get a point for a fiber because it's at 6%. Ugh, boy, this is not going good at all. Please don't come for me in the comments. I'm just addressing this based on the nutrients alone. Last time I did an Orijen, I had so many people come out of the woodworks and get mad at me. I don't make the numbers up. The numbers are what the numbers are, okay, guys? The numbers are what the numbers are. I am not making it up. Calcium, we want no more than 1.2. When you look over here, the calcium is minimum 1.2. That is with the moisture in it. When you correct and you go to a dry matter basis like we're supposed to be doing, the calcium shoots up to 1.36, so you're not going to get a point there. And then the phosphorus at 1, which could potentially be correct, but when we do the dry matter basis conversion, it actually brings it up to 1.14. I'll be in all honesty, I did say that if it was only 100th off, I would give them the point. So I will give them the point, and that brings out the Orijen to a whopping 2. So there's that. Last one. I'm not going to go to the website, but I will show you guys. Go really close there. This is what we're going to be doing. This is the Purina Pro Plan healthy development. I might actually have to go to the website to be able to see the feeding guide in order to get them the points on that if anybody is interested. we'll see where we get if it even makes a difference or not. Let's start with the AFCO statement. The animal feeding tests. So they did do feeding trial on that. Yay for Purina. Using AFCO procedures to substantiate that the Pro Plan puppy large breed is complete and balanced for all life stages. So they do not get the point because it's all life stages, and they are calling out for large size dogs, 70 pounds or more. So again, this is going to be if your dog is going to be greater than 70 pounds. They did lump it in as all life stages, so we're not going to get the point there. But still, all in all, not unhappy. They did the feeding trial. So not totally unhappy with that. Getting into the ingredient list, they've got chicken, rice, corn gluten meal, whole grain corn, poultry byproduct meal. So it's going to be a predominantly chicken-based diet. And they did have some beef fat in there as well. They do have some pea fiber that's lower down on the list. So the bulk of the diet is going to be a chicken and rice diet, which is what the label says. So they're going to get 2 points there. Now we're going to get into the feeding guide, and if we have time, we'll go and we'll see. I do have an appointment in 20 minutes, so we may not get to that on this particular video, but let's go ahead and I'll flash up the numbers here in the guide for you guys. So the protein on the Purina Pro Plan, this is a dry matter basis, is coming in at 31.6. So that is going to be correct. And so you will see here when I was saying there are some different philosophies between Purina and Science Diet through their research. Purina's research is heavy on the higher protein is more appropriate. Hill Science Diet believes in a more moderate protein. And so, kind of got dueling research there, but both still within reason, within the reference ranges, but you will see that Purina will shy towards a higher end of the protein categories. Fat at 16.6 is actually lower than the Science Diet, so that's interesting. Still excessive as far as this optimal 12%. But again, for the if you check that chapter in Small Animal Clinical Nutrition, I believe the 16 actually would be closer to what is a reasonable expectation for that. So you can't give them a point, but all in all, pretty good. The calcium is coming in at 1.42, which we know that is going to be excessive. And that's what happens when you start to get higher and higher in protein. It becomes more difficult and more costly to bring the calcium and phosphorus down because those meat sources are often attached to bone, right? And so the higher and higher you get with the protein, that's the trade-off you get. The farther and farther and more difficult and more costly the consumer it becomes to get the minerals down. So we are off the chart there on the calcium, and then the phosphorus at 1.1, they're going to get a point. So we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Even if they got the feeding guide, it would be a 6. So I'm not going to do that because it's still going to score significantly lower than the Science Diet, which was a 9. And so let's recap really quick, and let's kind of do a little side by side on these guys. The Science Diet scored a 9. Why? Because they only lost a point on the fat, and that is if you're going by the fat in the most rigorous orthopedic chapter of Small Animal Clinical Nutrition. If you're just going with the straight up, it actually would score a 10. The Orijen was a complete disaster. Because large breed puppies, it's very, very, very important. If you're going to go through the trouble of feeding a large breed puppy food, you want to make sure that it's actually tailored to the needs of a large breed puppy, and that is a lower calcium and phosphorus and a lower protein and lower fat. They did not deliver that. I do know a lot of people are falsely under the assumption that the Orijen has higher minerals because it's more nutrient dense. It is not. It had the same nutrient density as the Science Diet. So 2 on that, not my favorite. It was grain-free, which raises a concern, especially because a lot of large breed dogs are prone to dilated cardiomyopathy, so I don't think we should be messing with that at all. And then we get to the Purina Pro Plan, and it was kind of interesting. They have a little bit of different philosophy sometimes than Science Diet with the protein, but the protein wasn't the problem with the Purina Pro Plan. It was the minerals, and I think that is because with the minerals, we do get into issues with the higher the protein. It tends to be directly correlated to the mineral. So as the protein goes up, the minerals tend to go up too. It's not a bad option because they lost a point on the fat. So we talked about that. That's a wash because all of them lost a protein on the point on the fat. I think the less restricted fat range, it would be okay. So that might bring it up to a 6 or 7. And then the AFCO statement, it was a little bit off. It was for a large breed puppy, but was all life stage. So honestly, the Pro Plan isn't a bad idea either. We're talking a little bit of semantics on the AFCO statement with that one. But I was trying to point out the different things so that you guys could see the differences, because otherwise, potato, everything's the same. So I was just trying to point out a couple of those things for you guys. So I hope you like that one. It was based on request. And I have an appointment to go to now. So I think I will say goodbye and I will see you guys next time. Bye.